There's something strangely intimidating about a brand new Minecraft world. Not because there's nothing to do, but because you could do absolutely anything. You can build anywhere, go in any direction, become whatever kind of player you want to be, and somehow having every possibility available makes choosing just one of them surprisingly difficult. So instead of trying to plan the perfect world, I decided I'd let this one tell me what it wanted to become. This world, I truly did not have a single idea of what to do in the first place. It seems like for the past few videos, I've been repeatedly starting over in new worlds because I've honestly been getting a little sick of planning out builds. I think every single time I start a new world, I have this grand idea of what I'll do, and it becomes a little bit too intimidating to continue on. So maybe this time I start Minecraft as what it's truly meant to be. I'm gonna go ahead and collect all the basic materials, but this time I don't actually know what's gonna come of it. I'm just gonna collect stuff to start off, and maybe something good comes of it. I think that for the basics that everyone gathers when they start a Minecraft world, it's the obvious oak wood, maybe some birch and spruce, and then all of the varieties of stones. I know I tend to build a lot with granite, andesite, and smooth stone, so I'm gonna make sure I'm extra stocked up so whatever comes of this world is not burdened by the collecting of materials. For now, I think it's time to make a small hut. And maybe this winds up being my base permanently. This is yet another server that I've started on. This is actually the Roundtable Hold, and for those who don't know, this is a brand new Forever SMP hosted by Dai. I'm actually one of Dai's moderators, so I'll be playing on this world for a very, very long time to come, and it is a Forever SMP, so it combines my love of being on a server with being able to build and see progress over a long period of time. Because I'm one of the moderators, I'm also technically part of the Capital group, where, the magistrate and all that. So I'm trying to build close to the capital, and I found this gorgeous beach that honestly really inspired me due to the landscape. I spent a little bit of time before this terraforming, but because I originally didn't plan on making this into a video, I don't have any footage of it whatsoever. I think making the surrounding area a little bit smoother and filling in all of the weird random holes that Minecraft terrain generation has made it a little bit better and a little bit easier to start building. And I am one of those people who likes building according to the terrain. I don't tend to terraform a whole ton because I really like Minecraft's natural terrain, and in general, I want to keep terrain intact almost wherever I go. I think maybe that is the architecture student in me, but I think overall it makes the build a little bit more interesting rather than building on a flat surface. I'd found this one build online that I was kind of aiming to imitate because I didn't have any solid idea of what I wanted to do in this world. I didn't have a theme going on, and despite the capital's theme being a wild western town, I didn't actually know what I wanted to do for my own little area. I'm not too far off, so I wanted to make sure it can kind of blend into Wild West, but I think it's a little bit wrong to do fully Wild West bank Red Dead Redemption when I'm on a beach. So instead, I'm taking that old, weathered, dusty vibe, and I'm gonna do a fishing hut. And I think the materials of this being pretty much all wood and a little bit of granite will blend in really well to the area. And in the back of my eyesight, from the opposite way of this angle, is the entirety of the western town. So trying to make it a little bit appealing and not too jarring. So, as I've said, I wasn't actually planning on making this into a video. When I joined the server, I just wanted somewhere to live. I found a build online that I really liked, and honestly, I borrowed from it quite a bit. Not because I wasn't capable of coming up with something by myself, but I didn't really feel like it this day, and I wasn't trying to prove that I could build something original. I just wanted a place that kind of felt nice to come back to. And then I wound up adding another little building later on, and then another, and then a dock, and then a boat. And before I knew it, I'd spent a couple of my evenings this week building this tiny fishing village that really wasn't meant to become anything more than a home. And somewhere in the middle of building all of this, I realized I was having a lot more fun than I'd had in a while. I'd made a video about this previously with building for the fun of it. But I think even in that video, it was slightly disingenuous because I had somewhat planned out the thought of making that build beforehand and building something smaller. But even then, as I've grown from that video until now, albeit about only 2 builds ago, I think that I've changed a little bit of my perspective in that even planning something slightly can sometimes feel like a little bit of a chore. I think it was because nothing about this really had to justify itself. This time, I wasn't planning on making this into a video, whereas that nostalgia video, I was definitely planning on making that into a video. There wasn't a thumbnail I had in the back of my mind for this. I wasn't wondering whether this build would get enough views or if people would think it was impressive. I also wasn't trying to make the next giant city or next big project like I've done for pretty much my entire YouTube. These are just tiny little buildings. One of them only takes maybe 20 or 30 minutes before it already starts to look like something. And honestly, that's kind of enough. I could finish one and look around, decide I liked it, call it a day, maybe build another. I don't think I realized how much I started measuring my enjoyment in the size of what I was making. I know it's been kind of a thing on YouTube lately, where the bigger builds tend to perform better in the Minecraft building YouTube space. It almost always takes a really crazy impressive thumbnail to get a good amount of clicks. It's strange how easily that happens. Not just in Minecraft, but with almost everything. I think one of the strangest parts about getting older isn't that life becomes busier. Everyone tells you that. It's that almost everything starts asking for a reason. Why are you doing this? What are you getting out of it? Is it useful? Is it productive? Even the things we love eventually get measured by what they can give us back. Going to the gym stops being about feeling stronger and starts becoming about whether the mirror looks different. Cooking dinner stops being something you enjoy because you finally have an evening to yourself, and becomes another thing to optimize with meal prep and macros. Reading has to teach you something. Walking has to count as cardio. Hobbies somehow become side hustles before you've even realized you've stopped calling them hobbies. I don't think anyone intentionally chooses to think that way. I think it just slowly happens because we're surrounded by the idea that every single hour should be building towards something bigger. And to some extent, I understand it. I started making YouTube videos because I love building in Minecraft and because I love telling stories. But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me that also thought, imagine if this actually worked. Imagine if one day I could wake up and this was my job. I think almost everyone who's ever uploaded a Minecraft YouTube video has thought this at least once. It's a wonderful dream, but I'm also incredibly grateful it isn't something I need right now. I'm in grad school, I'll graduate, I'll find a job, and life will continue regardless of what happens here. That means YouTube gets to remain something that I choose. And I think there's a really important difference between choosing something and depending on it. Because when every creative decision becomes tied to whether it succeeds, you kind of slowly stop asking yourself whether it mattered in the first place. Did I enjoy making this? Instead, you start asking, was it worth it? They're similar questions, but they're not exactly coming from the same place, and they won't lead you to the same place either. This little fishing village probably won't be the most impressive thing I've ever built. It certainly isn't the biggest, but I enjoyed almost every single minute of making it. And lately, I've been wondering if I've accidentally been treating enjoyment as something that has to be earned, as though I need to accomplish enough first before I deserve an evening where nothing particularly important happens. Over the past week, I've moved to a completely new city. My apartment is still mostly boxes, and I don't really know anyone here yet. The days are way quieter than they used to be, and because of that, I've been forced to spend a lot more time with myself than I'm used to. At first, that felt a bit uncomfortable. I kept thinking I should always be doing something, or exploring the city, meeting new people, working ahead, editing another video, being productive in some way. But a funny thing started happening. I'd make dinner, I'd go for a walk, I'd come home, I'd sit down for an hour and build a tiny fishing shack, or just hang out on the server. And at the end of the day, I'd think, that was actually a really good day. I don't think we talk enough about that. We spend so much time talking about building a good life that we sometimes forget a good life is mostly made up of very ordinary days. If every ordinary day only exists to get you closer to some future version of yourself, then you're asking most of your life to be a waiting room. But what if it isn't? What if some evenings are allowed to end with nothing more to show for them than a tiny fishing village, a good workout, maybe a homemade meal, or the feeling that for a couple of hours, your mind finally became quiet? Ironically, I think that's when creativity does its best work anyway. Not when you're squeezing every last idea out of yourself because you have to produce something remarkable, but when you're relaxed enough to notice ideas you would have walked straight past otherwise. I didn't build this video because I thought it would become a video. It became a video because I enjoyed building it. And I hope, even if only for a little while, that's something I never lose. Let's get back to building, and as I've said, because all of this was actually an unplanned video, I'm missing a good chunk of the in-between parts, but that just means we get to skip forward to the final tour at the end a little bit earlier. So this is the start of another rickety old fishing hut, and this is the second fishing hut that I built. I wanted to use the mangrove as kind of an example of weathered wood. Like maybe the boards were beaten up so badly that the wind can go almost completely and entirely through this building. And I'm using the white shutters just to contrast it a little bit more. I was originally planning on using something like mangrove to add a little bit more color into the area, but I don't think mangrove shutters give that nice contrast as much as the wood does, and the pale oak wood makes it a little bit more nautical. I honestly probably shouldn't have built this as quickly as I did, but I'm not too mad about it. I think building it so quickly made the shape of this build a little bit odd, and therefore the roof was almost insanely impossible to do in the end. But I'm adding all the small details below with this oak fence look with the spruce to make it kind of look like everything was sun bleached. I think this is a trick that I'm going to use a lot more often now. I really like the idea that maybe the wood's been beaten on so much by the sun that it's faded to this light color. And adding a lot of signs around the fences make them look a little bit more supported and add a little bit touch of detail and add a little bit more detail to the area. I've really been enjoying the use of signs. I actually picked this up from Beans and Apples, who I think do a pretty similar style to this build. They're very known for their kind of Pacific Coast beach towns that they've built near Beans Bay and now starting Pinto Point. And I honestly really love the style of their videos so much. I think they're so cozy and warm, yet they can build such a wide variety of things that honestly look very realistic and very immersive. And I'm kind of taking a page out of their book when I'm designing these. I definitely need to format the surrounding area to add a bit more nuance to this. I think it's a very cute area, but it's lacking that little extra special touch that Beans and Apples have so easily done in their area. But I gotta figure out this roof because this may be the most complicated shape I've ever given myself for a roof. The diagonal definitely isn't easy when you only have one individual block per diagonal, if that makes sense. In my old boathouse that I made 2 videos back, I had a diagonal that was based off of a varying amount of blocks. So on the edges of the diagonal, when it would meet like the other, I guess, X or Y axis of the blocks, I would give it a corner stair. But again, this is survival, so I'm kind of stuck with using these weird techniques. It's not the greatest, I know, but I swear it came along in the end. It took a lot of jumping around and a lot of destroying and replacing blocks to get this to work out as honestly perfectly as I think it did. I've been having visitors throughout this whole time because I am, like I said, part of the moderation team. So maybe later throughout the series, you'll see me pass out a bit of permits to people, as well as, helping people along with their random adventures and contracts that we've set up for the server. I've really been enjoying what it's like to moderate this server and interact with so many people. I think it's very easy on a server, especially a very large one, to kind of stick to yourself a little bit and maybe not meet as many new people as one may do on a smaller server. But because I'm kind of put in this position, it makes it really nice to get to know everybody. I'll always have people visit me because I'm near spawn, and I think it makes for adding some new ideas that people suggest a little bit better. I've gone ahead and finished the build with some copper and mangrove to give some really nice contrast and fit into that nautical vibe a little bit more. And I think I'll go ahead and finish off the back porch later on, as I think it would make a really good area for a hanging boat, or maybe like a launch point for something. As of now, I think it's a really good fishing spot and probably one of my favorite ones to use, and I'll use it as a storeroom on the inside because I don't have a lot of space in these really small buildings. Maybe this one winds up being just foliage, but for now, a lot more stuff is going in the storeroom. For my next build, I want to make these all somewhat functional. So I'm building this fishing hut based off of a few images that I saw on Pinterest. Don't mind the random floating boxy chunks in the background. I haven't really worked with flashback before. That's another small change, as you may have noticed. I am using flashback instead of replay. I typically have never been able to use flashback due to the fact that I play with, honestly, an excessive amount of mods at times. But because of how this server is, it will be vanilla forever with a few plugins like the tree falling mod and some fishing plugins I think we're adding later on. But anyways, I have this idea to go off of a fishing house that has a large net hanging on the outside, and I want to make sure that it looks really rickety based off of the reference photo that I'm going on. So I'm going for a lighter color palette to contrast with the building next to it. And then also adding in some diorite, because I think diorite gives it a really good grungy look, as well as some glow lichen later on. And I'll add a lobster trap with some maybe trapdoors Because I'll probably wind up using a decent amount of banners for the rest of my builds, banner art is definitely something I've been wanting to try. It's not something I've actually used in the past, but I think it's one of the more impressive and unique ways to add something to a build, especially in Windows, or honestly, kind of just for fun to create like a town banner. So I'll leave this house for that, and on the inside, I'll add a loom, maybe a chest or two to store all the dyes and templates for it. This is coming along well so far, but I have little to no idea of how I'm going to pull off this roof. Doing a slanted roof on this small of a build is a little bit of a feat, I think. But I'm going to go ahead and finish off this lower area before I even start to think about that. I'm kind of doing this like corner style gradient where the gradient's kind of wrapping around the corners to give every side an even amount of texture, and just to really make it look sun weathered on maybe the parts that the sun hits the most, as well as the fact that this is by the sea, so a lot of salty water is weathering all of the wood and giving it this extra gross look. Okay, now that I've worked out the outside a little bit more, it's time to deal with this roof. So I actually went ahead and did this roof 4 or 5 different times with a lot of different blocks. I think I started off with slightly weathered cut copper slabs, but I wasn't loving the color of that, and I think the color of those are a little bit too light. So instead, I'm going for a mixture of spruce and dark oak, and because campfires are the perfect color, I'm gonna add those in also. I was going to go for a 3-tiered roof so that the slant is split over 3 height layers, but because of how small of a footprint this is, I think only 2 tiers works out best. And just to make sure that the top layer of the roof isn't a little bit odd looking due to the fact that I'm using slabs, so the half slab and full slabs kind of show on the top of the roof, I added on some spruce trapdoors because I think it gives it like this extra weathered look that I'm really happy with. It kind of looks like it fits, and it doesn't even look like that's the reason for putting the trapdoors there. And I think I gotta add on some more antenna and some more extra candles and some lightning rods to make this look a little bit better. What I've been doing throughout the entirety of these few builds is using gray candles to kind of look like maybe seagulls, or I guess they wouldn't be barnacles because it's not underwater, but maybe they look like seagulls, or maybe they'll look like seagull scraps, let's say that. I think they look really good, and they add like a little bit extra touch and texture to make it look a bit more grungy without being, you know, your classic techniques to make a build look a little bit more weathered and worn in. But I think that almost finishes up this area. I gotta work on this fencing a little bit. I think for the surrounding area, I'm going to add some chains to give it some more horizontal lines, as well as some fences to finish this part off. I think that it looks really good, and it doesn't need the extra layer of signs that I've been doing for all of my other fences that are around this fishing village. I think this texture also plays into the fact that it's supposed to be like kind of a lobster trap. If I'm gonna be honest, I don't actually know what a lobster trap or like a fishing net for this area is supposed to look like. Again, based off the reference image I'm going off of, I don't really know how I would have been able to build that. I could have probably used copper grates, but I feel like copper grates don't give the look of a net. So instead, I'm going for a more hollow approach with the lobster trap that I've set up. And again, because this video was so unplanned, I literally did not film it at all. But instead, I have a trapdoor set with red candles to look like the lobsters. And because we have head database on the server, as I think one of the data packs, I've used that to establish the color and texture of larger chunks or larger lobsters, maybe. I think for my last build idea, I need to go ahead and collect some coral because I'm going for a more of a gray color palette. And instead of being boring, like I always tend to do and using andesite, let's go travel a bit and explore the area nearby. This area is just about finished up, so let's make sure that we get this roofing done. And I did redo this roof a few times over because I wasn't 100% happy with the look of it, but I think the colors come together quite nicely. And I'm very happy with how weathered and worn this area looks with all of the growth of maybe sea moss or kelp or something along the sides of it. This area will serve as all of the dead coral that I've collected, a storehouse of sorts, and maybe some other foliage as well. I know I already have some valuables in this as kind of a fisherman's hut, and I think it's really turning out well. I have a few more ideas for the next installment of this, but let me show you around.